What happens when a really joyful cultural celebration suddenly sparks a huge national controversy over immigration? Well, we're about to dive into an incredible case study in leadership where one community faced this major test of its integrity, and how they responded, well, that became a really defining moment.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the core question of integrity that kind of kicked this whole thing off. Then, we'll check out the super clear message the community sent. We'll also explore the proud legacy they were fighting so hard to protect, get into why trust is so important in immigration, and finally, pull out some key lessons on leadership and the right way forward.
All right, first up, a question of integrity. Now, this whole story, it doesn't begin with a crisis. It actually starts with a celebration, a cultural event that, completely out of the blue, put an entire community's reputation right under the microscope. So I want you to picture this. A really vibrant cultural event. The kind designed to build bridges and celebrate diversity. But then, what happens when, behind all the celebration, some really serious questions about trust and integrity start to pop up? Well, that is the exact dilemma that sparked this entire situation. So, the problem was this. Reports started surfacing that some people who had come to New Zealand as part of a cultural delegation might have actually violated their visa conditions. And look, this wasn't just some small paperwork mistake. It was a real challenge to the country's immigration system, a system that is fundamentally built on trust.
And that leads us right to our second section, a clear community message. Because in the middle of this growing controversy, the community's leading organization, the New Zealand Indian Central Association, you'll hear them called NZICA, they didn't just stay quiet. No way. They stepped right up.
And you can really feel their motivation in this quote from the NZICA President Veer Khar. He said, "The reputation of the Indian community in New Zealand must remain strong and respected." Honestly, that one sentence tells you everything you need to know about what was at stake here. This was about protecting a hard-earned legacy.
And their response? It was incredibly direct. NZIA put out this public three-step call to action for the individuals involved. Number 1, cooperate completely with Immigration New Zealand. Number 2, try to get your immigration status regularized. And number 3, if that doesn't work out, you need to leave the country voluntarily. I mean, what a powerful statement about taking ownership of the situation.
But they didn't just stop with the individuals. NZICA knew this was a bigger issue. They called on the event organizers to be totally transparent. They called on other community leaders to make sure they were guiding people down the right, lawful path. And, this is so important, they called on travel agents to act ethically and responsibly. It was a message for the entire ecosystem. Which brings us right here to protecting a proud legacy. To really get why NZICA's response was so fast and so strong, you have to understand the century of history that they were determined to defend.
Think about that. Over 100 years. That is how long the Indian community has been a core part of New Zealand's story. This isn't some new group. They are a foundational part of the country.
And over all those generations, they've woven themselves right into the fabric of the nation. We're talking about building businesses, making huge contributions to healthcare, advancing education. They've been absolutely essential in shaping New Zealand's modern, multicultural identity. That's the legacy that was on the line.
And this really gets to the heart of their whole strategy. The community leaders understood something crucial. The actions of just a few people can unfairly tarnish the reputation of so many. So, by responding so decisively, they sent a message, loud and clear, that a few alleged breaches would not get to define a community built on generations of hard work and respect. So, that brings us to the core principle here, what I like to call the currency of trust. It's all about this really delicate balancing act between celebrating culture and, at the same time, maintaining the integrity of the immigration system. And there are really two sides to this coin, right? On one side, you have genuine cultural exchange. That's amazing. It strengthens ties, it celebrates diversity, it builds connections. But when these programs get misused as some kind of backdoor migration loophole, well, they do the exact opposite. They just erode trust, they damage reputations, and they can even lead to stricter rules for everyone else down the line.
And another really serious concern that NZICA brought up was the role of these misleading offshore agents. There are reports that some people may have been totally exploited by intermediaries who were making false promises about migration. And that's just an unacceptable practice that hurts both the individuals who are being tricked and the integrity of the entire system.
All right, let's bring it all home in our final section. Leadership and the way forward. What are the big takeaways from this powerful example of community responsibility?
What can we learn here?
When you look at it, NZICA's response is really a masterclass in community leadership. They didn't try to deflect or deny what was happening. They acknowledged the issue head-on, they publicly supported the authorities, and they powerfully reaffirmed their community's deep commitment to integrity and the rule of law.
And this brings up a final, super important point: the role of journalism in all of this. This story was reported by WebFit News, a platform that's dedicated to covering these kinds of key community issues. It's really a perfect example of how independent reporting can shine a light on responsible leadership and make sure the public conversation is based on facts, not just whispers and rumors.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In a world that's becoming more diverse and multicultural every single day, what does true leadership actually look like? Well, maybe it looks a lot like this: facing a tough problem head-on, with integrity, with transparency, and with a deep